The best Spider-Man comic of all time has never been adapted. Not in the movies, not in the cartoons, never been in the video games. The death of Jean DeWolf is peak Spider-Man content, and the fact that it's never been adapted is a travesty. Let's run through how crazy this story is and then talk about how it needs an adaptation. If you're looking for a gritty, very hard-hitting Spider-Man story that's got impact, this is literally the one. Starting off with Jean DeWolf's death, the story starts off on a very heavy note. Jean DeWolf was a police captain who had worked with Spider-Man a bit prior to her passing. Jean was a no-nonsense police captain who was very stern, but she secretly really cared about Spider-Man. She was too stern to show it, but the character had a huge soft spot for the old webhead. She was so stern, even Spider-Man didn't really even know that she cared about him. Jean had also always wanted to be a police captain. Her father was a police officer, her stepdad was a police captain as well. As long as she could remember, she wanted to be a captain. No matter how much her mother would protest or try to get her to want to do something else, she just wanted to be a captain. It didn't help either that her stepdad was the captain and was also just an all-around great parent, you know? It kind of just made her want to be the captain even more. But Jean is murdered at the very beginning of this insane story. I can only imagine how her family must have felt in this moment. Her mom didn't even want her to be a cop, and her stepdad was kind of the reason she became a cop. I can't imagine. It's got to be just pulls on the strings alone, right off the bat. Jean's death then sparks a manhunt to find who killed the captain, and this is a great part of the story alone because this allows you to kind of play a whodunit or for who's the murderer. There's no real clues beforehand, just little crumbs dropped for the reader. The person who commits the crime is also in the story, so it's not like some random dude they just pulled the mask off of like in a Scooby-Doo episode. No, like you could actually play who did it. Who was the man who murdered Jean DeWolf? I personally found this really engaging because when I was reading for the first time, I really was just like, well, who did it? The entire time I'm looking around like, was it this man? Was it you? Was it her? I wasn't sure. And I really honestly found that super engaging. Obviously it wasn't Spider-Man, but someone had to have done it, right? The story continues with Spider-Man trying to get to the bottom of things. He teams up with the detective Stan Carter, who's like next in line. While the two are riding together and talking to each other, Daredevil actually is at the courthouse in which Sin Eater comes to continue his killing spree. He almost even kills Daredevil when he sees his real target enter the room, the judge. Sin Eater blasts the judge with a shotgun and escapes into the crowd. Later on, Sin Eater then shows up at a church and he's shown killing a priest during confession. The man has murdered 3 people, police captain, high-profile judge, and a priest. He's taking aim at some of society's highest-ranking people. This man's a monster. Next, he then aims to take down J. Jonah Jameson, but his plans are thwarted and the Sin Eater is taken into custody. In custody, they unmask the man and they see who it is. This man gives up his address, his location. He claims to be the real Sin Eater, and he says at night, all night long, he just hears voices in his head talking to him. And that's what caused him to commit these crimes, okay? Daredevil doesn't believe him either. Daredevil had seen Sin Eater, and Daredevil, if you don't know, can tell people's heartbeats, and this man's heartbeat is nothing like the Sin Eater who had shot the judge in front of Daredevil. So when Daredevil tells Spider-Man, he doesn't really tell Spider-Man explicitly because he doesn't want to give up his secret identity or his powers, but he's like, Spider-Man, we gotta check out this guy's address and everything. Let's get to the bottom of this a little bit more so, okay? Spider-Man and Daredevil go check out the perpetrator's apartment, and they realize he's literally next-door neighbors to Detective Carter. Like, they actually have a door that leads to each other's apartments, and it's already cracked open. Daredevil and Spider-Man see the cracked open door, not realizing it's the detective's apartments, and they just go inside. Spider-Man is looking around through the mail, and he finds out, oh, it's Detective Carter's place. While Daredevil opens the closet and reveals the Sin Eater's uniform. Detective Carter was a Sin Eater the whole time. Jean DeWolf's number 2 literally murdered her. And his next hit, again, is still J. Jonah Jameson. Spider-Man swoops in at the perfect time to save Betty, and he beats the living breaks off of the Sin Eater. Like, into a bloody pulp. He just dominates this man. Sin Eater is then arrested, and the story you think is over. But apparently, Detective Carter was drugged by S.H.I.E.L.D. many years ago when he was an operative working for them. Which is why he went crazy and has these demons living in his head. So he's released on the account of insanity, and all of society is up in arms. The community is outraged at the thought of a mass murderer being allowed back on the streets. When he's released, an angry mob is formed outside and they actually jump him. Jean DeWolf's stepdad is actually there too, and honestly, this part literally made me cry the first time I read it, because he's standing there like, that's the man who killed my daughter, and you're just like, holy moly, that's sad. That's in a Spider-Man book. Spider-Man books are nothing like this, man. Spider-Man books nowadays, they just can't compare. The angry mob starts beating Sin Eater down to death when Daredevil exclaims that the angry mob's gonna kill him. And then this could be my favorite part of any Spider-Man comic ever. Spider-Man is just so real for this. He replies to Daredevil, so? Like, good. Like, This is my GOAT for a reason, bro. Let that murderer die for all I care. Spider-Man, of course, jumps in and saves him. He's the beacon of hope. At the end of the day, he has to save the guy. But, like, he should do so reluctantly, okay? Like, he doesn't want to save murderers. Spider-Man knows he has to save murderers, but he's still a human being, okay? He still has to have his own character. And just when you thought the story couldn't get any crazier, it hits a whole new level. Spider-Man is talking with Detective Carter, and he realizes the man can barely walk or talk. Carter reveals that this all happened when Spider-Man beat down the Sin Eater, like beat him into a bloody pulp. Remember I talked about that? This makes Spider-Man feel all different types of ways. He's furious and he believes that Sin Eater's trying to make him feel bad, but he also does feel bad. I mean, he just beat this guy into a bloody pulp. The guy can barely talk, can barely walk, like he has to like drink his food through a straw pretty much. I'd feel bad too, but you gotta think he's also a murderer, but he's also like didn't want to be a murderer. It's a tough situation to be in. I get why Spider-Man feels bad. I get it, okay? Later on the news, Spider-Man sees Electro's committing a bank robbery, so Spider-Man goes to try and stop him. But he's like too nervous to fight. He's like hitting him, and Electro's like, what is this? Like, why are you hitting me with like pillows over here? And Electro actually wins. Electro beats him down, and Spider-Man's left in the streets, like kind of unconscious, when an angry mob forms again, and they're like, yo, I bet we can get some money for revealing Spider-Man's secret identity. This is our time. Let's get paid, people. And guess who shows up? Carter shows up with a gun, and he scares all of the angry mob away. Spider-Man was just saved from a mob by Carter this time. Talk about a role reversal. I do want to point out the gun was a toy gun. Carter was in his right mind, but he knew holding a gun would scare everybody away because they think he's a murderer. So, not the smartest play considering you just got released on the accounts of insanity, but I guess this doesn't go against the insanity claim, so can't really lose too much there. The story continues and Spider-Man realizes he needs to psych himself up, right? At the same time, though, Sin Eater is literally losing himself. Detective Carter is becoming the Sin Eater again. The voices won't stop talking to him. The two of them are going through a complete opposite trajectories. Spider-Man then goes to fight Electro again, and he even lets Electro like beat him up a bit. He's like, yo, I gotta get my mojo back, you know? Like on some Muhammad Ali stuff. He takes some hits so he can really get the pounding out. But at the same time, Carter is still hearing voice in his head. He succumbs to the Sin Eater and he dons the costume again. Spider-Man is fighting Electro inside of a building, while outside of that very same building, Sin Eater / Detective Carter is holding a kid hostage with a gun in a police standoff. Carter battled the Sin Eater for so long, but he just couldn't hold him off forever. Now he's on the prowl again, while Spider-Man is learning that he's actually got to fight back again. Well, Spider-Man does get his mojo back and he defeats Electro, but on the outside, Sin Eater is talking to himself. And he throws the kid to the side, points his gun at the police, and the police all light him up. Spider-Man sees Sin Eater on the wall in a puddle of blood, and he races over to him. Carter says, I won. Sin Eater is dead. It's then shown that Carter never loaded the gun, and Sin Eater just thought it was loaded. And that's the end of the story. Crazy, y'all. It's actually crazy. I said at the start of this video, but this story has still yet to be adapted. Sin Eater doesn't even show up in the games, the shows, or the movies. Not even the best of the best Spider-Man adaptations have done this storyline. Well, one was going to. They just didn't get the chance. I say this a lot, but Spectacular Spider-Man is just so peak. If it wasn't canceled, it would be regarded by far as the greatest superhero adaptation of all time. Not even close. They had so many storylines being built upon each other all at once, how a cartoon actually should. There were just so many different ways they could go. The show had plenty of different directions. Peter's love interest was going to be Gwen for a bit after him and Liz broke up, and then he was going to end up with MJ a long time. Eddie Brock was supposed to come around and be a good guy. Cletus Cassidy was supposed to become Carnage, and he's even shown in a video, he's even called out by name, Cletus. Roger Kingsley shows up in the show, but he never even dons the Hobgoblin costume. Hobie Brown shows up in the show, and he never even dons the Prowler costume. The show had so many different avenues to go, one of which was Sin Eater. That's right, Jean DeWolf and Sam Carter are actual cops in the show, and although they don't have many lines or much characterization, the little they do have is pretty good.
What makes you think your costume vigilante isn't a big bad himself?
Oh, come on, DeWolf. Kid's just saying what everyone's thinking.
Look, Sarge, we've been through this. Spider-Man means well, probably. But when he takes the law into his own hands, he goes too far.
You ask me, Spidey hasn't gone far enough.
Jean is pretty against Spider-Man. She knows he's needed because there's so many super criminals around, but she thinks cops should be the ones who are putting themselves in danger instead of a vigilante. Whereas Stan, however, is quoted on saying he thinks supervillains get off too easy. When other people question if Spider-Man is too rough on the bad guys, Stan questions if Spider-Man's been rough enough. These characters show up a solid amount in the show just to clean up the crime, But man, I really wish we had gotten to see this full story, man. Just one more season. The story is just so freaking wild, man. There's so many converging storylines all interlocking well together. This should be adapted, man.
Hey, Spidey, back in black, huh? I approve.
We have so many of the pieces already in the MCU, it's actually like the perfect time to attempt the adaptation of this immaculate story. Sin Eater has never been used before, so he definitely hasn't appeared in the MCU yet. Free to be used. Spider-Man is the main hero. He's obviously in the MCU, he's free to be used. Daredevil is like the very big side hero. He's also in the MCU and he's free to be used. It's also no secret Marvel is planning on putting Spider-Man and Daredevil in a movie together. Well, what's probably their most prominent storyline? The death of Jean DeWolf. I'm telling you, it just makes so much sense. Electro is one of the main villains in the book, but you could just switch him out for Shocker, who's criminally underused in the MCU and has shown up already and isn't dead. All the tools are in the toolbox. They just have to put pen to paper. Give us an MCU story with Spider-Man in a very serious situation. A cop he worked with closely was killed, and now he has to figure out who did it with the help of Charlie Cox. Shut up and take my freaking money. For me personally, if I had to cast anybody as Sin Eater, I would choose Lakeith Stanfield. I freaking love this guy. I think he's great in everything he touches, and he can play a super serious role so well, man. This guy's phenomenal. I literally love him in everything he's done. Marvel, this story is Spider-Man's best story. People would love a serious, more grounded Spider-Man story in the MCU. The man has literally been to space.
I mean, I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, sir.
Bitch, please, you've been to space.
Give him a more grounded story. People would eat that up. People love Daredevil and Spider-Man team-ups. People will eat that up. All you have to do is put the pen to paper and watch the money roll in. Dunk out. Peace.